my hope here in the Western world, in America, is that we're able to find a balance of getting here people legally, because historically, I've never seen a country where forced, and again, this is a term that I heard from Ron Paul and libertarian thought, is that forced integration doesn't work. We have to come to a place where the native population of a land wants to welcome and see the benefits of having people from Mexico, people from Argentina, people from Italia come here, or Syria, or whatever you might want to say, and see the benefit in that.
Breaking news. Conflict minerals are coming under heavy fire. You see, 60% of the world's cobalt comes from Congo, a region making billions leveraging the use of child labor for the production of crucial minerals that enable our electronics. Already existing supply shortages could get extreme as new executive orders have been drafted to cut off the use of minerals such as cobalt from this region. The clean energy trend is unstoppable, and cobalt is a crucial component. Savvy investors ready to fully experience this undeniable revolution need to visit crushthestreet.com/cobalt17. Hello everyone, and welcome in to crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I brought on the line a really interesting person here. His name is Miguel Guardado, and he's a first generation born to Mexican immigrants who is a Trump supporter, has conservative beliefs, and something that puts him in a minority of a minority category, and I think he would agree with that. He has a YouTube channel, La Reform, and you can follow him there. Miguel, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me, and you're right, I am in a bit of a minority, but at the same time, about, and I know you know this, but about 29% of Latinos voted for Trump, and it's my belief that it wasn't necessarily that we voted for Trump, but it was more from when I listened to these people, whether it's on social media or on YouTube, Twitter, but also in person, is that it's the ideas that connected with us. It wasn't so much that this is Trump, this is a conservative guy, but it's just the ideas that we connected with.
Absolutely. And I actually was going to follow up with that roughly 30%. And that was a big shocker to left-wing policy, the left-wing agenda, obviously the fake mainstream media. I mean, was a huge shocker that how could the Hispanic population possibly have any support for a man like Donald Trump? And again, it was a big shocker, but at the same time, there were people out there that saw through a lot of the things that the quote-unquote fake news wanted people to see, and I'm talking about the mainstream media there. So let's talk about this for a little bit. What are so many people missing? I mean, again, 70% of the Hispanic community didn't vote for the conservative guy, the conservative ticket. Maybe it was just because they didn't like Trump, but for whatever reason, the majority of immigrants are supporting liberal candidates. So if you can give us some perspective on that and your thoughts.
I don't know if necessarily people are missing, but I guess the disconnect comes in, especially in the Hispanic population and people that I talk to, and I've had several jobs in the past, from being a consultant to working in unions and working with the immigration population, with people in the service industry and my family, and a lot of it is frustration. It comes down to being frustrated as immigrants and haven't been promised for decades now, whether it was the first Bush, whether it was Clinton, where it was Bush Jr., or whether it was Obama having promised a comprehensive immigration reform and not delivering. I haven't met. I haven't met too many people, but I've never met anyone in my life that prefers to come here to this country illegally. Everyone that I've ever talked to prefers to come here legally because as a son of an immigrant, you understand how difficult and how dangerous it is to cross that border through a desert. You know, we're talking about threats from nature, either from the weather, the heat, to animals, to actual people being out there. And that is for a lot of people, that is the frustration that we encounter. So when we saw someone come onto the scene, not necessarily talking about comprehensive immigration and promising to make everyone legal in this country, as many other presidents have come and said, we saw someone that just came and said, we're going to get rid of people that have committed crimes. And, you know, I supported that. But he also said, I'm going to have a big door policy. And to me, that rang true. I might be wrong. He might prove me wrong, and it might just be rhetoric again. But when he talked about having a big door policy on that wall that he likes to talk about so much, to me that signified a change in direction, something that I hadn't really heard before in that way.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people missed that. Miguel, do you feel like the conservative agenda is losing a battle that really won't be won because it's hard to compete for, you know, the immigrant vote when Democrats are running around promising to welcome everyone in and to pay for their health care and put their kids through our education system without abiding by common sense legal immigration policy, or at least abiding by those rules? Is it a losing battle for traditional conservative values? It
depends on how we frame it. I think that we forget that in Mexico, I mean, we have a lot of conservative values too, right? We come from a Roman Catholic tradition.
Of course, right.
So a lot of us subscribe to, I mean, not only conservative values, but we have conservative values in our culture. So it depends on how the Conservative Party approaches immigrants. It is difficult, though, to go against an agenda that the liberals have in the government right now that keep promising, you know, free handouts. But at the same time, I've made my point in my video, and this again goes to in my videos in my channel. This again goes to frustrations that we have, is that they have been, you know, empty promises and just promising these handouts that really never really come, right? Whether it is things like, you know, healthcare, which was promised to people, and now we see rising premiums. You know, an Obama phone is only going to get you so far. So I think if the conservative movement or you know, Trump in this particular case, I mean, he is conservative, but he's not your traditional neocon. If he focuses on things that the immigrant population want, which is economic freedoms, a lot of my parents came here for those things. They came here for jobs. They came here to be able to provide for their family, right? So if Trump keeps his agenda of focusing on jobs and improving the economy, I think he can reach out to the immigrant population in that way and continue his talk of a big open policy and supporting legal immigration, a safe path to citizenship for, you know, not only Mexicans, but anyone that wants to come here and respect the law of the land. I think he can win by improving the economy.
Right. And that's a big point here. And a lot of this people don't want to admit, but illegal immigration is bad for immigrants and natives to this country. You know, illegal immigrants are bad for legal immigrants because the fact is many situations they're poor and they're going to drive down wages because they're going to work for wages because they know they don't have protections, and there's just certain things that they're going to be able to do that the native population, the legal immigrants, are not going to want to do because they're just in a more vulnerable spot. And this is good for big businesses who profit off of labor of illegal immigration. This is good for left-wing politicians who pull for their support. I mean, they're technically not supposed to vote, but over time, you know, they pull for their support. And it's at the backs or on the backs of the American middle class, and that's legal immigrants and natives. So any thoughts on this?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, that, you know, that doesn't, the abuse of the immigrant has been able to continue because of illegal immigration, right? There's an interest in certain industries to be able to have cheap labor. And a lot of that comes by making sure that people stay in the shadows. So, I mean, I have no proof, but I mean, it will only, I mean, I think for me, it's almost common sense to have an underclass of citizens that you can exploit, right? And I mean, I've seen that my whole life. I mean, my family was part of that. My family was part of working out in the fields for less than minimum wage. And what I promote in my ideas, whether it's on my channel or just talking to people, is the idea of legal immigration, right? So that doesn't happen, because I do have an interest of not only improving my own life, but anyone else that can come to this country and benefit from it. And I think that illegal immigration hinders that progress for people to be able to do that. And I know this, not to change the subject, but keeping with in immigration, we see how corporations also abuse and exploit H1 blanking the H1N visas, right?
Right.
Where they're able to bring in employees from, you know, skilled employees from different areas for cheaper. We saw, I think there was a recent report where Apple and Microsoft and several other Silicon Valley companies have been using that strategy to drive down their cost of labor. And we have to be able to, as a country, to close it. And I think a big part of that is you know, providing a path to people that want to come here to work legally.
Sure. I mean, for the companies themselves, it's great. It's higher profit margins. But again, it's at the backs or on the backs of the American middle class. And the middle class subsidizes the lavish lifestyles of these multinational corporations, these politicians, and you know, people who are disconnected from the real problems of an uncontrolled illegal immigration problem at our borders, especially with the entitlement system that we have. There's just really no checks and balances of that. You know, Ann Coulter, she's not a very sensitive figure for who is completely anti-immigration, you know, illegal immigration, and you know, she's for very common sense legal immigration. But she says, hey, if conservatives give up amnesty, basically legalizes everyone that's here, and she has estimates that are north or close to 30 million illegals in this country, it's goodbye America. Because really, when you think about it, the political will to act somewhat conservative will be out the window. And if you have enough of a base that will support big government agenda, because we know that immigrants in general statistically vote left, vote for big government, really, where does that leave the country?
No, that's a very polarizing idea of what you do with the mainstream numbers, right, is somewhere around 10, 11. I think, as you say, if you talk to other people outside of the mainstream media, we're going to talk about, 3 times those numbers. I've heard up to 40. Whatever the number is, whether it's 11 or 40, there has to be a solution found. And obviously, I don't have that, but I do know that legalizing every single one of them is not a realistic thing, right? But I also know that deporting, whether it's 11 or 40 million, is also very unrealistic, because now we're talking about violating rights that we uphold within this country, whether it's in our Constitution or the Bill of Rights. Because how are you going to go and round up those people? And that was a point that I first heard from someone that I kind of hold in high esteem, and the Senator Ron Paul. I mean, what not to make this emotional or anything like that, but how are you going to do that? Are you going to go and ask for papers?
Sure, it's a tough spot. Yeah,
it's a very tough situation, and I think even Trump alluded to this and during his campaign to one of his, I don't know if he was caught, he was leaving one of his events, one of his speeches, and one of his supporters asked him, we got to get rid of the illegal immigrants. And I think his response was, yes, but this is a very hard situation. There's a lot of good families that come here to work, or just something to that extent. And I think that Trump caught some heat for saying that. But I think that by him saying that, he acknowledged how difficult this situation is, not only from a human aspect, which it is for me, because it's a close issue to me, because I know people that are here illegally. I know friends, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also a very complex legal matter, right? But to me, it hits more on an emotional level. But I also, on my logic side, I do understand, and I'm able to have a conversation with other people when they say, we do have to deport some of the illegal immigrants. I think the president's strategy should be to deport those bad hombres that he has talked about, and those have committed felonies and hard crime. Not the idea of being here illegally, because then we're talking about deporting 40 million people, and I don't think that that's possible.
Yeah, the complexity of it is certainly a difficult task. And we have seen how difficult it is for the Republicans to get anything done. I mean, they said they're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and we get this Obamacare light bill that they give us, which is basically 2 steps forward with Affordable Care Act and 1 step back. We're still progressing down this big government socialized system. And I can't see them actually getting to the point where they say, hey, we're going to deport every single person, because we've seen how difficult it is for them to do anything. And something that controversial, and people do have heart. But at the same time, there's rules, right? I mean, I told you I have family members who came here illegally, and I can step back, on a logical perspective and say, hey, that's not good for the country, what they did and how they exploited the system. And I think we do need to draw a line that says, hey, this is legal, this is illegal. And at a certain point, you can't just make compassion decisions with people. The country has to have rules. And if people aren't going to go by those rules, whose fault is that? You know what I mean? Like, are we supposed to have compassion for people who knowingly broke the law? I know it's a tough question, but at the same time, they knew they were breaking the law, right?
Yes, yeah. And, it's funny, I've had this, as probably you have, we've had this conversations coming from immigrant backgrounds. We've had this conversation several times. And it's such a huge, complex issue. we have to talk about, you can get into so many issues, but one that I often find myself in is, why are these people moving up here, right? Why did my dad come up here? Why did your grandparents come up here? And a big part of it was economically. So why didn't they have that economic opportunity back in Mexico or back in the country of your grandparents? A lot of it is things that Donald Trump actually talks about in this globalized economy that is benefiting established members, elite people, right? So we can talk about trade deals such as NAFTA that not only necessarily adversely, negatively affect the United States, but it also affects Mexico negatively. We can talk about institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF, which have gone into Mexico and the Caribbean and have affected the economies negatively of places like Haiti, where they put restrictions on what they can export to certain countries and limits of what they can do. And if these people are putting economic and social pressures on these countries to move up to America to find a job, you start getting into a rabbit hole where if you dig deeper and deeper, you start finding, Soviet-style agendas of creating conflict through immigration, something that Stalin was known for. And I know that's kind of a far stretch, but it's the idea that they're doing it economically. Stalin would move people into countries like Latvia, Lithuania, and Ukraine, Russian, to these areas to create social unrest. And we see the effects of that. I know this is a different topic, but it relates to immigration.
No, it totally relates.
You see the effects of those policies that Stalin enacted, 60, 70 years ago, now in the Ukraine, because you have a large Russian population that is loyal to the Kremlin. But then you also have the native population of Ukraine who is loyal to Ukraine. And this is where these conflicts now exist. My hope here in the Western world, in America, is that we're able to find a balance of getting here people legally, because historically, I've never seen a country where forced, and again, this is a term that I heard from Ron Paul and libertarian thought, is that forced integration doesn't work. We have to come to a place where the native population of a land wants to welcome and see the benefits of having people from Mexico, people from Argentina, people from Italia come here, or Syria, or whatever you might want to say, and see the benefit in that. And I think that this country has done that and can do that again.
So is it a matter of just reforming the entitlement system, reforming the immigration system, so that people aren't coming here and exploiting it and, creating that resentment from the people who live here, who are paying taxes, and basically seeing that immigration is hurting them, and they're losing their jobs, or their wages are going down? Is it a matter of just reforming these things and, getting back to a place where, immigration can largely be a good thing rather than the reverse?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of it. I come, again, sort of a minority within the Mexican community, but I come from the ideas that taxation is theft, right? So I think you do have to reform the entitlement system, and not necessarily just because of immigration, but because it is abused by citizens as well. But I think that does attract immigrants to this country. But I think ultimately I think that's I don't know, just some icing on the cake, because I think that most immigrants do come here to try to make a living, you know, and but then, like you said, you know, the handouts that are, I wouldn't say necessarily just presented by liberal people, but by neocons as well, to try to attract a vote, that is a problem, and yeah, we need to revisit the idea of welfare and make it more to what we used to have as a charitable country, where we contribute what we want and who we want to as well.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't blame anybody for walking down the street, seeing a dollar bill, bending down and picking it up. And I'm talking about the entitlement system, you know, on a personal level, on an individual basis, doing what's best for themselves. If it's available to them, I don't blame anybody for that. It's the system that's in place that needs to be taken care of, in my opinion. And I love what you said about taxation being theft, the extortion of the people, you know, taxation without representation. We talk a lot about that here on our show. So, Miguel, I want to give you an opportunity here to just share some final thoughts. And I appreciate you coming on the show with me today. If you want to let people know a little bit about your YouTube channel, please do.
Yeah, no, you know, if you want to keep up with me, I try to do videos about 3 times a month, 4 times a month if I can, because I have a day job. But I just like to put short little videos with just comprehensive ideas that anybody can get behind. My whole idea is not to necessarily try to divide people, but try to make people understand where I'm coming from and how we can work together. So if you want to go on there, it's just Law Reform, which is LA Reform, REFORM. You can go out there and check out the videos. But yeah, I mean, final thoughts is, you know, try to find that common ground, whether if you're a liberal or a conservative and people, and try to find that common ground. I think a lot of us get caught up in either making fun of, you know, oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're a white supremacist or a racist, and on the other side, you know, sometimes I get caught up in conservative people get caught up in making fun of snowflakes, you know, and the snowflake movement out there. But we have to, you know, find some common ground, because the symptoms of what's happening in Congress and the impasse that there is also something that is translated to the population as a whole, you know. And I think if we can get past that, we can start seeing that we actually agree on a lot more than what we actually think we do.
You know what? That was well said. I mean, when it's all said and done, we want good jobs. We want to be healthy. We want to be safe. Those are all things that we as a country, as a people, we all believe in. So, Miguel, thanks so much for coming on the show with me today. I really appreciate this time, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, you know, Kenneth, thanks a lot for inviting me. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to come on your show.